Good evening, everybody. We're up to the second recording of the Maamar ועבדי, Dovid, Tafshin Mem Vav, and we're up to Sif Daled. To give a recap of where we're holding so far, we said that the Yecheskel has a nevuah, that the two kingdoms of Yosef and Yehuda will merge as one kingdom when Mashiach comes, and the ultimate king will be a king from Yehuda. And the Rebbe asked a couple questions. First of all, why would I think that there'd be two kingdoms? It's almost mashma that there is real room to think that both kingdoms will exist, but the ultimate king will be Yehuda. So what exactly does that represent? And why will the ultimate king be Yehuda over Yosef, if Yosef also has leadership and kingly qualities? And what does this mean, b'nefesh adam, in our Avodah, because our Avodah brings Mashiach? We started explaining in Sif Beis and Gimel that the difference between Yosef and Yehuda is hinted to in their names. Yosef means to add and expand. That represents the faculty of understanding, knowledge, intellect, which is through how a person grows, through experiencing, developing their way of seeing life, refining their way of thinking. That personifies Yosef. Yehuda means not to expand myself, but to almost kvetch myself, to submit myself towards something greater than me, and to put myself aside for a higher cause. That's not hinted to in the koyach of understanding. Rather, it's hinted to when I put my understanding aside and just do the will of my master, which is hinted to mainly in action. Dry action, which is putting my spiritual growth on the side, my intellect, what gets me going. I come to a realization that life's not about what gets me going. I put that on the side, and I just follow in simple action the will of my master. That is the hinted to in the name of Yehuda, from the language of moide, to admit. In Yiddishkeit, these represents the two paths of Torah and mitzvahs. Torah represents the path of understanding and growth, like Yosef. And mitzvahs, which are meant to be done with Kabbalah's El, dry action to follow the will of Hashem, that is the avodah of Yehuda. This leads us to Sif Daled. So again, I'll read and then maybe continue outside, and just to keep the flow going. Here we start Sif Daled. V'hinei b'vei zefane avodah ela d'Torah mitzvos Talmud u'maaseh yishakla v'tari b'Gemara mimehem gadol. These two paths of Yosef and Yehuda, of Torah and mitzvos, the Gemara in Kedushin discusses a debate. It says Reb Tarfa and Reb Akiva and several of the sages were sitting in a home in an attic, saying which one's greater, Talmud or Maaseh? Is Torah study greater than doing mitzvahs, or is doing mitzvahs greater than learning Torah? One held learning Torah is greater. One held that doing mitzvahs is greater. And in the end, they all came to a consensus that learning Torah is greater because learning Torah leads also to mitzvahs. Let's keep reading. From the Gemara it seems when discussing learning Torah and discussing doing mitzvahs, they weren't able to come to a consensus. If you just weigh learning versus just weighing doing mitzvahs, it's not so simple which one's greater. The only reason why we said learning is greater is because learning also leads to mitzvahs. So in other words, it's not Torah versus mitzvahs. It's mitzvahs versus Torah, which also comes with mitzvahs. So the only reason why it's greater is because it has both milas. Meaning, if I would technically separate them and look at learning Torah by itself and doing mitzvahs by itself, it wouldn't be so simple that learning Torah would be greater. Only because it's able to have both milas to it, as the Rebbe will now explain. Let's explain what this means beruchnius. What would the pro of learning of Yosef be, and what would the pro of doing mitzvahs and Yehuda be? So the Rebbe says now, the milas Talmud hu inyan hatainug shabai. What's the mila of learning Torah? The fact that it's enjoyable, that it really plugs me in, it lights me up. V'yesh mila b'maaseh she'en b'Talmud inyan askafia. What's the mila of doing mitzvahs over learning Torah? Not that it lights me up, but that it makes me transcend myself. It makes me actually bend myself and do more, follow Hashem's will despite myself. Not make Hashem's will light me up, but allow, it's in a sense much purer because it allows Hashem's will to take me over in a way that puts myself aside for His will. That's the mila of mitzvahs. On the other hand, I'm not lit up when I do mitzvahs. When I learn Torah, I am lit up. That's the in other words, when I do mitzvahs, not only am I having Kabbalah Sol and following with simplicity the will of Hashem, there's also a Maila in people not being stuck in their own nature and every so often chipping past their nature. Like Tanya explains, who's considered a real Eved Hashem? Someone that doesn't just learn a topic 100 times, which back in the day was considered the usual amount of learning, but they learn 101 times. They've learned the life's ultimate what's the word I'm looking for? That the ultimate in life is not for me to become the best me, but for me to transcend me. And the etzem fact that I go against my teva is already a huge maila. And that's a maila that you have in mitzvahs over learning Torah. Ulbasayf nimnu v'gamru talmud gadol shatalmud mev l'dei maisa. Harei ein ze mishum shatalmud tainug mitzad atzmai hu l'mayla mimaisa kfiya, ela mishum sheyesh betalmud gam mayla samaisa, shemev l'dei maisa. So when we say that learning Torah is greater than doing mitzvahs, we're not saying that having tainug and geschmack in Judaism, getting lit up on Yiddishkeit and Hashem, is greater than transcending yourself for the sake of Hashem. We're just saying learning Torah could also have the maila of transcending yourself for the sake of Hashem. Shekadei leidas ha'maisa asher yasa tzarich liyas talmud lefnei zeh. No, sorry, I think I skipped. משום שהתלמוד, אלא משום שיש תלמוד גם מעשה משום עבדי מעשה, שכדי לידע המעשה שיעשו צריך להסתלמוד לפני זה, ויש להוסיף בזה, שבתלמוד עצמי ישנה גם המעלה שבמעשה שהיא הכפייה. כי לאחרי שלמד תורה בתכלס השלמוס מצד התענוג שלי, ורחבת הנר שלי והשמחה שלי, הנה אחר כך מגיע לדרגה נעלס יסר, שלמד מצד כפייה והידע, שמבטל קומץ יוסף ולמד מחמס קבלה זו. So, what then is explanation why Torah study is greater because it also has the maila of mitzvahs? Well, first of all, practically speaking, the only way to do mitzvahs is to know their laws, and that I find when I'm learning Torah. So the reason why learning Torah is ultimately greater than doing mitzvahs isn't because learning Torah and its qualities are greater than the qualities of doing mitzvahs, but the only way to practically do mitzvahs is if I learn Torah first. So that's one technical benefit of learning Torah, how it includes the maila of mitzvahs. The second, more spiritual benefit, how Torah comes with a package of mitzvahs also, is I could, even though Torah generally is about tainug and getting lit up on and lighting myself up, lighting my brain up with elikos, but technically you could learn Torah also in a way that it becomes, that it's not about my enjoyment, but I'm doing it also purely for the sake of Hashem. Like we brought the example earlier, learning 100 times to etch it into my memory, to really understand it clearer and clearer and to retain it, that I do 100 times. The 101st time, that I've just transcended myself. In other words, I'm learning Torah right now, which is about enjoyment, which is about me being able to capture what I'm learning, but at the same time, within learning, I'm able to also make it not about me, and to learn an extra time just purely because it's for the sake of Hashem. They say about one of the Chassidim that he would sit and learn Chassidus until it became so geschmack and so enjoyable for him, and once it hit that point, he would close the book, because now it's becoming too much about him, and he'd open up a Gemara. Until that, he started getting too into it, and it started becoming too enjoyable, and he'd close it, and he'd start learning Chassidus. In other words, the point of Torah, yes, Torah has an element that mitzvahs don't have, which is the Yosef aspect, the fact that I grow, I retain it, I find it enjoyable, and I could really, really absorb it. But at the same time, even within learning Torah, I could have that same self-transcendence, that same eskafia aspect and factor that I have in mitzvahs. I could do that within learning Torah too. So it's not so clear that Torah is greater than mitzvahs. It just is it's the only reason why Torah has said that it's greater is because within learning Torah, you could also have the mitzvah smaila over there too. This is all how the Rebbe discusses the Gemara of Talmud versus Maisa. However, as the Rebbe quotes now, Chassidus says, nowadays we say learning Torah is greater because it brings to mitzvahs. But when Mashiach comes, we're going to say mitzvahs are greater. The avodah of doing mitzvahs, the avodah of going past yourself, transcending yourself, and doing iskafia is greater than the avodah of learning Torah and the geschmack that it comes with. And the Rebbe will explain why now. When Mashiach comes, it says that there's going to be no more impurity in the land. ושלימוס האילי הוא שהעבודה תהיה למעלה גם מבחינת התענוג, כי אם עבודת השם מתוך קבלת סול, למעלה רצונו של הקדוש ברוך הוא. ועוד, I'm going to read both aspects they're saying and then explain, כי בזמן הזה עדיין נמצאים במצרים וגבולים דקדושה. וישנם גדרים של מעלס, V'emrim diyesh ma'ila b'maisa v'yesh ma'ila b'talmud. Aval la'asud lavei shetia yitzia mikol ha'metzarim ugvulim hine az ein shayach lemer mailes ela rak amitis ha'aveda she'evdim es Hashem b'kabalas al bli shum pnies gam le pnies tikdusha. I'll explain this in the way I understand it, but the Rebbe over here is saying two things. First of all, nowadays, why do we say learning Torah is greater and having Geschmack in Yiddishkeit is greater than the Kabbalah Soul and just doing mitzvahs? Because if I'm doing Kabbalah Soul and I am never retaining and I'm never absorbing my Yiddishkeit, I'm just constantly putting myself aside for Hashem, where am I? Where am I? The I that I keep pushing to the side, what is it? It could be dead, apathetic, cold, not have any feeling towards Hashem, and it's just constantly bashed to the side so that we could fulfill the will of Hashem. But where is it? The person himself, his mitzias, the way he is, could be very distant from Hashem. That's the mile of learning Torah, where the person himself is actually getting close to Hashem. Not that the person needs to push himself aside in order to retain closeness to Hashem, but the person himself is getting close. We're taking the person out of the mud. This is all, nowadays, we have that mile of learning Torah. When Mashiach comes, we're not going to have any distance from Hashem. When Mashiach brings about a reality that everything, the whole world becomes, we start seeing, as Chassidus says, how the Yesh HaAmiti and the Yesh HaNivra is really one with the Yesh HaAmiti, how the truth of every existence is really its godly spark, how Hashem is really the truth of everything. So then there's no such thing as Kabbalah Soul, meaning I'm not going to be lit up. I'm going to remain distant from Hashem if I'm just having Kabbalah Soul. Nothing's going to feel any level of distance from Hashem. So then the question is just which one is a pure level of service? And the answer for that is Kabbalah Soul of mitzvahs. In other words, if I didn't explain that clear enough, the pro of learning Torah is so that my mitzias, who I am, doesn't remain distant from Hashem. If I'm constantly just having Kabbalah Soul and putting myself aside, who I am could remain distant and disconnected from Hashem. For that I need Torah learning to keep my closeness to Hashem, to make sure who I am isn't distant from Hashem, but who I am also gets affected and permeated and connected to Hashem. But when Mashiach comes, that's going to be our default reality anyways. So then the question is just which one is purer and more altruistic, and then we're going to say mitzvahs will have that milah. Second of all, the Rebbe is saying now, not only from the fact that there's going to be no more tumah and no more distance from Hashem, but also Hashem's presence will be openly revealed. We say that the marriage between Hashem and the Yidden comes in two stages. We have Kedushin and we have Nisuin. Kedushin is the first stage of marriage before the couple is living together. And then when Mashiach comes will be the Nisuin between Hashem and the Yidden, when we are really one and intimate with Hashem. So imagine we're seeing Hashem in the Ra. What's the ultimate way of having a intimate bond with Hashem is when we completely leave ourselves and just connect to Him for who He is. He removes all layers, and comes to us the way He is, and we need to just remove all of our inhibitions and any level of self and just throw ourselves to Hashem, to who He is. Give ourselves up to Him completely. In other words, Mashiach is a time of ultimate revelation of Hashem to us, and the ultimate giving of ourselves to Him. Where do we see the ultimate giving of ourselves to Hashem? In learning Torah, that's not the ultimate giving of ourselves to Him. We're retaining ourselves. We're not giving ourselves up. We're trying to absorb Hashem into ourselves. By doing mitzvahs is when we completely lose ourselves and just give ourselves over to His will. So when Mashiach comes and Hashem's going to be completely open and revealed, we're not going to be discussing nuances. Is this a greater nuance? Is this a greater nuance? It's just Hashem is completely revealed to us, so then we completely reveal ourselves. The question then is, how do we completely embrace Hashem ultimately? And then the answer is, Maisa Gadol. So hence, when Mashiach will come, we're going to... The ultimate Maila will not be Talmud because it has both the Talmud and Maisa package, but purely Maisa. The Maila of simple, pure iskafia, leaving ourselves and giving ourselves up for the sake of Hashem. Not retaining Hashem within ourselves, but giving ourselves up for the sake of Hashem, the Maila of Maisa. Let's keep going. ויש לומר הביר בזה בניגלה על פי מה שכתב הרמב"ם ששלמות עבודת האדם היא עבודה מאהבה והיא מעלת אברהם אבינו שקרא הקדוש ברוך הוא אהבה והיינו העבודה בלי שום פנייה כמו שכתב הרמב"ם שם שהעבודה צריך להיות אפילו לא בשביל הפנייה שאזכה לחיי העולם הבא ושלמות זו תהיה לעשות לווה במעשה המשיח וזהו שלעשות לווה מעשה גדול מעלת הכפייה וקבלת עול שלמעלה מכל כיחס האדם ויש לומר, דזה נרמז במה שכתב הרמב"ם שצריך להיות עבודה גם לא על מנת שיזכה לחיי העולם הבא, דעניין העולם הבא הוא עניין התורה כמבואר בכמה מקומות, והעבודה בשלמות היא למעלה מזה. So we see this even in Nigla, that the ultimate type of service of Hashem is, as the Rambam says, the ultimate level of serving Hashem is to serve Hashem out of love, like Avraham Avinu did. And what does it mean to serve Hashem out of love? It means to serve Hashem for no ulterior motive. To engage truth and to love truth because it is true. Not because it will give me a good life. Not because it will give me heaven. It will give me a chance at Olam Haba. But to do it because this is right. This is Hashem's will. The Rambam says is the ultimate service of Hashem, which backs what we were saying before. That yes, we say Talmud right now has a great ma'ila because learning Torah also comes with the ma'ila of doing mitzvahs. But the ultimate ma'ila is the simple given overness of Kabbalah Soul, like the Rambam calls avodah me'ava, the complete giving overness of ourselves to Hashem purely because this is God's will and that's what I want to do. The Rebbe adds over here that the Rambam writes to serve Hashem out of love and not because he gives me Olam Haba. Chassidus says Olam Haba generally refers to the avodah is the reward for learning Torah. So we see over here the concept, the contrast to what we were just saying before. What's the ultimate service of Hashem? Greater than serving Hashem for Olam Haba, which is Torah, is serving Hashem out of pure love, to love truth because it is true, which is the ma'ila of mitzvahs. So this parallels what we said before about how when Mashiach comes, we're going to see the ultimate ma'ila is that of mitzvahs. Like the Rambam says that the ultimate way of serving Hashem is not for Olam Haba, Torah, rather out of pure altruistic devotion and given overness to Hashem, which is synonymous with the avodah of mitzvahs and Yehuda, as we're going to tie back now in Sif Vav. Now we could go back to the Haftarah and say, what is the chiddush of Yecheskel's nevuah? That when Mashiach comes, there's not going to be two kingdoms, and Yehuda will be the ultimate kingdom. What's the explanation? In a sense, there will continue to be two kingdoms. We will be studying Torah, which is the kingdom and the domain of Yosef. We're also going to be doing mitzvahs, which is the kingdom and the domain of Yehuda. In fact, we know most of the time we're going to be occupying ourselves with learning Torah in a way that we can't do now. We're going to have goyim attending to our needs. We're going to have ultimate peace of mind to be able to study Torah in a way of terasai umanasai. So not only will Yehuda be present, but the reality of Yosef and learning Torah will be very, very present when Mashiach comes. But this is the chiddush, that even though we will have Yosef and we will have Yehuda, but who will be the ultimate king? What will be the dominant spirit in which we do both Torah and mitzvahs? Avdi Dovid, my servant Dovid, serving Hashem as a simple servant with the ma'ila, with the style and beauty to simple doing mitzvahs. That will be the crown. And the real spirit of how we engage all of our Judaism. It won't be a king of Yosef and a king of Yehuda. It'll be one king of Yehuda, serving Hashem mipnei ava, just doing truth because it is true, and that will crown, and that will be the king and dominate both our service of Hashem in doing mitzvahs and in learning Torah. This is why, actually, how do we refer to Yehuda being King Mashiach? Dovid Avdi, or Avdi Dovid. We refer specifically to Dovid HaMelech and the kingdom of Yehuda as a servant, because that is exactly what the royalty that is what Jewish royalty will be when Mashiach comes. The ma'ila of Yehuda is precisely because he's a servant, a simple servant who's not looking for himself at all, but purely engaging Hashem's will because it's Hashem's will, like a simple servant. That's going to be the ultimate malchus when Mashiach comes, and it will crown both the avodah of Yehuda and the avodah of Yosef. And this will not only affect the way we do mitzvahs when Mashiach comes, but even when we learn Torah, it will be in that spirit. Okay, this leads us to Siv Zayin and Ches, and we will finish the Maamar. על דרך זה יובן גם בעניין זה ועבדי דוד מלך עליהם, שזה נעשה על ידי ההכנה בעבודת האדם בזמן הזה. So if you remember, we started off Sif Aleph with 3 questions. First of all, why would I think that we are going to have two kingdoms? Why is that a good idea? Also, why will the king be the king of Yehuda, not of Yosef? So these 2 questions we answered, right? Why would we think there's going to be 2 kingdoms? Because Yehuda and Yosef represent serving Hashem through Torah and serving Hashem through mitzvahs, and those both will be present. In a sense, there will be the 2 kingdoms. Nevertheless, the ultimate king, there will only be one king. There will only be one predominant and ultimate style of serving Hashem, and that will be the Avodah of Yehuda specifically, which will crown and be the king both of the Yehuda and Yosef, the Torah mitzvahs. That was question number 1 and 2. Question number 3 of how we started the Maamar, which we did not yet answer, and we're going to answer now, is that we bring about Yehuda, we bring about Mashiach through what we do through our Avodas Hashem now. So how do we make Yehuda king in our lives now? That's what we're going to answer right now. That right now we could also make Yehuda and this altruistic Avodah Me'ava king in our lives, and that will help bring Mashiach, which will bring in this ultimate style service of Hashem. ויש לומר שזה מה שכתב הרמב"ם שם, שתחילת העבודה היא שלא לשמה, מתוך שלא לשמה בא לעבודה לשם חיי עולם הבא, ועד שסוף סוף בא לשמה. לעבודה כאברהם אבינו, שקרא הקדוש ברוך הוא אוהבי. ומזה שעניין זה נפסק להלכה בספר הרמב"ם. מובן שעניין זה נדרש מכל אחד ואחד מישראל. הוא מבקש לפי כיכם, דישנו מהכיכס בכל אחד ואחד מישראל, להגיע לעבודה זו, ואולי יש לומר על דרך הרמז שזה שהנ"ל הוא הכנה אל הגילויים דלעשית, נרמז במה שכתב הרמב"ם, אין זה בפרק 10 מהלכות תשובה. תידוע דעניין התשובה הוא החידוש דלעשית לוי, כמאמר משיח עשית לעשווה צדיקאי בתיובתא, דמזה מובן שעל-ידי עבודה זו דלשמה, בתכלס השלימוס 10, באים להגילוי דלעשית לוי ועבדי דוד מלך עליהם. So when you look at the way the Rambam writes how we're meant to be serving Hashem, he says first we serve Hashem shalei lishma, for ulterior motives. We don't want Hashem to punish us, and we want rewards. Then we come to serving Hashem because we want Olam Haba. We want the world to come. Then eventually we come to serving Hashem Lishma with pure intention to serve Hashem and to do His will because it's His will, period, for no ulterior motives. The fact that the Rambam's being very realistic. He's talking to us. He's telling us that really the way you need to start off serving Hashem is for ulterior motives, not in the most altruistic way, but with some self-gain and self-cheshbon involved. Now, this very realistic Rambam who's telling us to start off serving Hashem for ulterior motives tells us also that you that I'm talking to that should start off serving Hashem shalei lishma also need to realize that you could also eventually serve Hashem lishma. In other words, the Rambam's saying that what we're expecting when Mashiach comes of serving Hashem just purely for altruistic reasons, to do what is true because it is true for no ulterior motives, is really possible now too. And if we do at least a little bit, if we try to bring ourselves to service of Hashem Lishma, that will actually trigger in the era of Mashiach, when we'll ultimately be serving Hashem with King Yehuda, which is the Ma'ila of Eved, and serving Hashem Lishma for no ulterior motives. That we can start now, and yes, that will trigger in the coming of Mashiach and from Yehuda. The Rebbe says how this is hinted to in the fact that the Rambam writes all of this in the 10th parak of Hilchos Tshuva, because Mashiach is going to be about bringing tshuva to the world. Mashiach will make even tzaddikim balei tshuva. That's the Mashiach's chiddush will be that those who are now referred to as tzaddikim will also reach the mila of tshuva. So if Mashiach is about tshuva, that means that, and it's known in Chassidus that everything comes in 10 levels, and in a parts of shalom, a complete package, a complete multifaceted idea comes from 10 angles, and level 10 is the ultimate. So when we do tshuva at level 10, when we now serve Hashem at this ultimate level of avodah lishma, that helps bring in the ultimate tshuva, which is Mashiach's coming, which brings tzaddikim to tshuva. Again, this answers question number 3 of the beginning of the Maamar. How do we make Yehuda king in our lives, which will then bring the ultimate king of Yehuda, which is Mashiach? And the answer is through at least attempting, and maybe here and there, and doing the best we can to serve Hashem for no ulterior motives, but to think before I do a mitzvah, before I learn something, that Hashem, I'm doing this right now not because it's routine and I'm from, not just because I want reward and I want you to answer my prayers. I'm doing this because this is your will and I want to serve you out of love, period. When we do that, that is triggering in bringing Melech HaMashiach and Va'avdi Dovid, the king from David HaMelech, who is Mashiach, who we refer to as an Eved, the simple servant. The last sif, V'hi Ratzain, and may it be Hashem's will, Sheken Yeh b'mher v'yemenu mamish, that we experience Mashiach immediately in our days, Sheikuyim hayu dechi mala haaretz de'as Hashem kamayim le'yam achasim. Hainu le'rak she'yasigu da'as beiram k'fi kayach adam, u'va'ifin di'ichud nifla she'en yichud kamayu. Ele yiser mizu, she'yagiu leb'chinas kamayim le'yam achasim, b'chinas eved neman, she'enim metzias b'fnei atzmei klal, v'yikuyim hayu advaisal Hashem mamlocha b'chol elam kulei, u'v'frat b'Yisrael am karevei. So the Rebbe says over here that V'hi Ratzain ends off with a prayer that we have an experience Mashiach now, and that the pasuk at the that Yeshaya quotes about Mashiach, that when Mashiach comes, and how this is how the Rambam ends off his sefer, that Kimala haaretz de'as Hashem, the world will be filled of the knowledge of Hashem, kamayim le'am machasim, like water decks the ocean, will be so full of the knowledge of Hashem like water decks the ocean. The Rebbe over here is saying how this pasuk itself points at both the avodah of Yosef and the avodah of Yehuda, because on the one hand we're saying Kimala haaretz de'as Hashem, the world will be filled with the knowledge of Hashem. That sounds like the Yosef Maila, right? The Maila of how we in our own heads will be so full of God consciousness and God awareness. However, in which way will we be so filled and expanded by the knowledge of God? Kamayim le'yam machasim, like water which completely overpowers the bed of the ocean, which is like Yehuda, which is that we're not going to be. It's not that us in our own skin will be filled with the knowledge of God, but the knowledge of Hashem will be so open and blatant to us that it will just completely deck us, and we will submit to it. We won't only absorb it, but we will also be submitted and completely overpowered by it, like Kamayim le'yam machasim, like water overpowers and covers over the ocean. That's like Yehuda, where we will become batul to the knowledge of Hashem. Not that the knowledge of Hashem will light us up and will fill us, but we will submerge ourselves in it. We will be submerged in it. That's like the Yosef and the Yehuda. And we should experience how Hashem will be king on the whole world, and especially us. Because every Yid is like Hashem's only child. And our being Hashem's only child is connected to Hashem's onlyness, to Hashem's essence. And the rest of the pasuk, where it says that Hashem will be a king on the entire, not only on the Yidden, but Hashem will be a king on the entire world. That on that day Hashem will be. Usually we pronounce Hashem's Yud K Vav K. When Mashiach comes, and we don't really have the time to get into this now, it says that it won't be Yud K Vav K, but it will be Yud K, which is how Hashem's essence, Yud K, doesn't need to filter itself to express itself, but Hashem's essence could be revealed in the Ra, as we explained before. Kshem Shani Nichtav, Kach Ani Nikra, the way I'm written, so shall I be said. That Hashem will be called and referred and seen the way He is at His essence, without any more filters. And Hashem's simple, ultimate oneness will be revealed. Hashem's ultimate, simple oneness is connected to the simplicity of a simple Jew down here, and we're going to see that when Mashiach comes. And may we see this speedily in our days. This concludes the Maamar. Thanks for watching and thanks for joining, and all the best. Mashiach now.